So in this segment, we're going to be talking about stuff to look for in the Leveling Up program. So this was written before the Leveling Up thing, but there's one really interesting thing they mentioned in this article, which Politico do kind of bury the lead on, which is that the UK's Prosperity Fund, the replacement for the structural funds, is actually £1 billion less than the structural funds we received from the EU. So not only are the funds going to the wrong places, we've spoken previously about how they're going to kind of richer Tory affluent areas rather than poorer areas which desperately need them. They're actually way less than what we received from the EU. So the Politico really burying the lead here. So maybe the editor, someone needs to have a word with the editor. But the blueprint for the British Prime Minister's flagship domestic promise was originally expected last summer. Now it's been delayed. They can blame the pandemic for it. Realistically, it's because they have no idea what they're doing. It reveals for the first time 12 missions, or as Lisa Nandy calls it, 12 failings from the government to address regional inequalities. Isn't it funny that the party that's been in charge for 12 years hasn't dealt with regional inequalities, including what's billed as the biggest shift of power from Whitehall to local leaders in modern times, despite the fact that, we could always have done this whilst members of the EU. Crazy, right? The document will seek to address some of the key criticisms aimed at Johnson's vow to level up Britain, namely that the policy is vague and tends to favour conservative voting parts of the country, which The Guardian actually did some really good analysis on. We've talked about it previously, and does expose the fact that they're lying. Johnson even recognised his government in order to boost it, renaming the housing ministry a ministry for the Johnson even reorganised his government in order to boost it, renaming the Housing Ministry the Department for Levelling Up Housing and Communities, and placing cabinet heavyweight Michael Gove. Would you call Gove a heavyweight? Really? That guy's failed, I think, in every ministerial position he was put in. Teachers hated him when he was in charge of education. In charge of justice, he was a joke. So yeah, would you call him a cabinet heavyweight? Definitely not. Maybe it's the fact that he's slow and he can't move very fast. Maybe that's why you call him a heavyweight. I don't know. The white paper ought to add details, specifically to ensure every part of England has a local leader with equivalent powers to London by 2030. So essentially a more local governing and a mayor, which, again, it depends on, what kind of powers the mayor has. Andy Burnham doesn't have a ton of power in Manchester. More mayors for those areas that want one is the promise. I mean, okay, Northamptonshire gets a mayor. Who cares? What are they going to do, honestly? Schemes such as the Towns Fund in 2020 and Levelling Up Fund last year, under which local areas were invited to bid for grants worth millions, caused controversy after many the chosen towns were in conservative strongholds, while it's unclear why some less wealthy places have been left out. I'll tell you why, Politico. It's because of pork barrel politics, that the government wants to give money in kickbacks to Tory areas and swing seats to keep them sweet. They've been doing this for a while. Local authorities could feel snubbed in all this, as there isn't a scant mention of their role and a risk of doubling up their function. So essentially it could add more bureaucracy and more departments to deal with things councils could already deal with. New money. One of the reasons for the hold-up to the white paper has been, according to multiple officials and government advisors, a tussle between Gove and Sunak, Treasury over funding. Sunak has been far more willing to sign off on individual pots of money for specific projects rather than making multi-year commitments aimed at big ideas such as improving productivity, which I'm not going to attack Sunak for too much, because when you assign money for a specific project, it's far easier to monitor their success rather than multi-year funding commitments like boosting productivity. Like, what does that even mean? You could put classical music on and say, oh look, we've boosted productivity. You could use really skewed figures to say, look, we've boosted productivity. So I don't disagree with Sunak too much here, which is surprising. Wednesday's release is set to contain the 12 promises. So this was written before the release, but again, it had some interesting points nonetheless. They want to improve life expectancy, literacy and numeracy skills, skills attainment, research and development, and productivity, according to the DLUHC. No department should have that many letters in an acronym. None. But, it's very unclear as to how they're going to be achieved, these things. The only way to achieve them is through adult learning, and, boosting schools. You've got life expectancy. The only way you could do that is through helping, funding the NHS properly and looking at improving kind of people's cooking skills and making healthy food cheaper. Skills attainment, again, you'd have to do that post kind of the school age and make colleges more accessible for people. The nearest college I have, you need a car to get there. It's in the wilderness. R&D, research and development, again, that's another tricky one. That's more a university thing. And productivity, which is very nebulous. But these are their missions nonetheless. With the government referring to money in existing schemes such as brownfield development or community ownership being diverted or reviewed. I mean, again, what does this actually tell you? Very little, very vague stuff. And no doubt in a few years' time, the government can argue life expectancy has gone up because the pandemic would have decimated life expectancy in this country. Much mention is made of the decentralisation of the UK Shared Prosperity Fund, but many more will be concerned that it falls £1 billion short of equivalent funding the UK used to receive from the EU. So let's break this down, okay? Not only is the money being allocated very badly, potentially going not to councils but to departments to potentially do the jobs the council could have done. Okay, not only is some of this, or a lot of this money really going to affluent areas or better off areas that are typically Tory, rather than going to the areas that actually need the money. Not only those things, right, it's £1 billion less than what the EU were giving in structural funds. Like, how crazy is that? On 3 different levels they have failed. And no doubt they'll get away with it because somehow people continue to vote for them. People in the red wall who's promised, they will promise their lives will change because of the levelling up thing. Are you happy? Because this is all you will get. Crumbs. That's all you will get. Beggars belief. Accountability. So in the white paper from the UK spending watchdog takes aim at DLUHC's limited understanding of what worked well in previous local growth programmes due to a lack of consistent evaluation and monitoring. So because the government has failed to monitor and look at what went well and what went badly in other local growth programmes, they ain't going to learn the lessons of the past. So essentially going to lead to more waste. So yeah, fail to learn, prepare to fail. More stuff. On research and development, for example, the paper commits to spending 40% more outside the southeast by 2030, which again, 40% more, surely you should have put a firm figure on it. It doesn't make sense. I mean, the government could cut, research, where has it gone? Research and development in the southeast, and that will help that figure in the north look better. Saying if they cut it by a few billion, say, oh look, spending in the north has actually gone up a bit, but it hasn't because you just cut spending in the south. Whereas its commitment on public transport is only that it should be significantly closer to the standards of London, which again, very hard and very vague metrics to measure, especially because they cut parts of HS2 that go further north in England, which it beggars again. It's crazy that they're getting away with this stuff. People are actually buying this. The white paper will not do much to remedy that, covering an enormous range of policy areas from education and health to crime and the arts. It promises all departments will be aligned with the levelling up agenda. So essentially saying that all of the different departments, justice, what other ones are there, the Home Office, everything else will be geared towards levelling up, kind of like a war economy, I guess. But again, it's not going to achieve anything. These guys have no idea, absolutely no idea what they're doing. Who takes credit and the blame? Johnson, previously being the leveller up in chief, delivering the relevant speeches, banging on about it at every opportunity. But in the end, Gove will get the blame because it's going to be a failure. Levelling up Secretary Gove will take the lead, presenting it to Parliament and fielding MPs' questions. This suits Johnson on several levels, since he can show that he's put a big beast at the helm, which is it really true? I guess that's perception more than anything. But, Gove is great at, Gove is a slimy scumbag. He can get out of a lot of situations. If Gove was smart and had people skills, right, he would probably be Prime Minister, honestly. If he didn't look so slimy and had people skills and understood how to speak to people, I think he would have won a Tory leadership race. But, yeah. What more can you say apart from the fact that this article kind of buries the lead, and the simple fact is the Shared Prosperity Fund is £1 billion less than the EU structural funds. But anyways, I'm going to leave it there. Let me know what you think in the comments below. Like, comment, share, subscribe, and hopefully I'll see you in the next one.